right, 24 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Every time I hear a story about how bad the economy is, I'm just going to use this as an example. I always will think about a cover of, one of the magazines that features entrepreneurs, and I can't remember the title of the magazine. But anyway, every year, like there'll be a story about somebody who last year was, sweeping floors somewhere, and this year he's a multi-gazillionaire, right? There's always those stories, right? And yet they'll say, but last year they would say, okay, we are in the worst of times. Like, this is not a good time to start. And meanwhile, there's some kid out there, or somebody, doesn't have to be a kid, who's doing something that's going to get noticed. And next year, 1 year from today, he's going to go from sweeping floors today to being the next big thing, right?
Yes.
Well, how does that happen, right? Is it by design? Is it an accident? Is there a formula that maybe we could follow? Those of us who want to become better at anything, maybe you don't want to be the next gazillionaire. Maybe you just want to, do something a little bit better than what you have been doing. Henry Timms is on the phone. The book is called New Power. He wrote the book with Jeremy, is it Hyman's, Robin?
Yes.
Am I saying the name right? How Power Works in Our Hyper-Connected World and How to Make It Work for You. This is a fascinating topic. Henry Timms himself is an entrepreneur. He's the president and CEO of the 92nd Street Y, which I love their videos, by the way.
Yeah.
The interviews that they do. He's a visiting fellow at Stanford, which I believe is the city that you can go north, south, east, or west and still end up in New York.
Exactly.
See, I know all these little trivia things. Henry Timms, good morning. It's an honor to have you on our show.
Well, it's great to be on with you, and I'm pleased you're enjoying our videos.
Yeah. Oh, I love your videos. Absolutely. And when I discovered them, by the way, I found a whole world of stuff I hadn't seen before, and people that I've always known, though. You guys interview some well-known people.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. We kind of get the most important thinkers and entertainers and actors of our time come across our stage in New York, and of course, now we're able to share all of those via our different channels with the world.
And some of those people have had the experience that you talk about in the book, where they went from having, it looks like there's no hope at all, and next year, like Springsteen, there was a Springsteen one time where I remember listening to him talk about how he went basically from having no money at all. With the guy who played Joey Tribbiani on Friends, had $11.
Yeah, Matt LeBlanc.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So tell me, does the book help me do that? I want to be able to do that.
Well, I don't know whether it's going to help you become Joey or Friends, but I'll tell you what it does. So the book is called New Power, and it lays out what we see as kind of the real skills of a new age. So look, we all recognize the world's changed in ways we didn't expect. Unexpected people are making their fortunes. Unexpected people are becoming political leaders,
right,
or even presidents. Unexpected companies are ending up on top, and we often can't quite work out why this is. So we wrote this book to say, look, in a world where everybody is connected with all this new technology, there is a new way of understanding the world, and that's through understanding how power is flowing differently. So the book lays out a whole set of lessons: how to raise money, how to spread ideas, how to be a leader, how to change an organization, which says in this hyper-connected world, we all kind of have to go back to school and learn a new set of skills. And if you can learn those skills, then I think you can end up getting ahead in a world where a lot of us feel like we're falling behind.
Is that right? So if Rip Van Winkle came awakened all of a sudden, and he went to sleep in the 70s, let's say, everything he knew about being successful in the world wouldn't apply anymore?
No, I think everything he knew about being successful would apply. So a lot of what we call as kind of the old power skills matter just as much as they already have, right? Your ability to manage systems, your ability to kind of command things, your ability to kind of hoard up your power. Lots of people are still powerful using those skills. But the people who are really powerful can do that, and they can do something else. They can work out how to get the most out of a connected crowd. And if you think about anyone who's succeeding in the world today, you'll often find that what they're actually really good at is getting lots of people around the country or around the world on their side. So let me give you a couple of examples. Think about something like the Me Too movement. So the Me Too movement, of course, was this kind of global extraordinary movement around men who had been assaulting women for years. And the way that that worked wasn't the way that power used to work. It was very much decentralized, it was distributed, it was made stronger when every woman stepped up to join the movement. And it surged all around the world, not like a currency. It wasn't like someone could own it. It was completely like a current. It surged and it flowed. And it was because people worked out how to engage a world who wants to participate in a shared cause. And so if you want to take an example from the corporate world, look at something like Airbnb. What Airbnb has worked out is how you can activate hosts and guests all around the world to share their properties with strangers. And they now have more properties than the hotel brands. You look at Facebook. What has Facebook worked out? Facebook has worked out how to get billions of people to share their ideas and their thoughts, and Facebook ends up doing very well from those transactions. So as you look across the world, the old power skills matter just as much as ever, but you also need to work out how you can get this connected crowd on your side.
And that's where the art of communication comes in, because you have to be able to be versatile in that, and you can't be condescending to people. You have to be helpful.
I think that's such a good insight. And actually, if you think about, we used to think about communications as really, who could shout loudest, right? So you would get your commercial, you'd make sure it was perfect, and everyone would admire the commercial you'd get on TV or in a magazine. The people who are communicating well now are people who create ideas that change. They don't stay the same. So think, as an example, about the ice bucket challenge. You all remember the ice bucket challenge, right? Where everyone was
we did it.
We did that.
We did it. Yeah.
So we all did that, right? And so why did that work? One of the reasons that worked is it had kind of the three characteristics of what makes ideas work in this new power world. The first thing, it was actionable. It asked people to do something, right? If everyone is staring at their devices all the time, everyone is waiting to play a part. So the ice bucket challenge, they asked us to pour water over our heads. But it also worked because it was connected. It tied you to other people. So Ice Bucket works because when we did it, we nominated our friends. So it wasn't just that you did something, it was also that it tied you to some other people. And then thirdly, the Ice Bucket Challenge could change. It was extensible. So the idea itself could change as it moved around the world. So in India, believe it or not, it became the Rice Bucket Challenge.
Really?
Yeah, in the old power world, if someone changes your idea, you would sue them. But in the new power world, if you can create ideas that can change but keep their spirit, you can end up on top. So that's one framework we lay out in the book, which is, we call it the ACE framework. If you want your ideas to spread in a new power world, you have to make them actionable, connected, and extensible.
You educated me on the two systems, open versus closed.
Yeah, and I think that's so much the story of our age in a way, which is we went from a world where everything was kind of by nature and instinct closed up to a world where everything is being opened up in interesting ways, not all of them positive. So I think the other thing to say about this is we aren't cheerleaders in this book for everything in this new world being perfect. There are lots of bits of this new world that we worry about a great deal. But the truth of it is that if you're trying to hang on to a world where you could keep everything confidential all the time and everything buttoned up and you were in charge of the narrative, there are no companies or organizations, I think, who are going to make a good long-term bet on that mindset.
Some of the old world things, I think, that apply to all of the examples you just gave, though. Let me give an example. I just think these are important and not always as easy as they look. Like, for example, the Me Too movement. I just think the words Me Too, they had like an easy, catchy thing, and I think that helped it. And that's old school marketing, isn't it?
Well, I think in a way, yes, in a way, no. What was different about Me Too was the marketing itself. That it wasn't like there was a centralized marketing budget which bought Me Too adverts in newspapers. Right. What happened with that is it came about because women everywhere started to add their stories, and actually think about the framing of that. Me Too is an action, right? It's an action. I'm taking you. Brave women around the world stepped forward and said Me Too. They then joined a connected community. The reason Me Too was so strong is because every woman made every other woman's testimony more powerful. That was the connected piece of it. And again, with the Me Too movement, it changed as it moved around the world. That campaign, when it got to Brazil, became all about people reporting their first assaults. When it got to France, Me Too changed, and it was called Denounce Your Pig. and it was a much more activist campaign.
Oh, wow.
Where women were outing the men who had assaulted and wronged them in meaningful ways.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually a very good example. You can't imagine that Me Too campaign. Of course, there have been many waves of feminism and women's rights over the years, but you can't imagine the Me Too campaign happening with the same kind of speed and spread as it did recently, even 5 years ago. And so what we wrote the book to do was to say, look, all of us, whether we're running a global social movement or you're running a local business, we have to understand how these dynamics are changing our lives. I ran across a dentist recently, and you might think to yourself, well, a dentist is the most old power skill of all, right? He just fixes people's teeth when they come to see him.
Right.
But I ran across a dentist recently who has built this amazing community of his own patients around his practice, largely using Instagram. So what he's actually done is he's created this practice around showing people some of the stories that happen in the dental world, encouraging people to be healthier about their teeth, showcasing the stories of some of his clients who are doing good work around the world. And what he's essentially done is built a community around his dental practice, which isn't about him being a great dentist. It's about him being a member of a larger community that shares something. And by doing that, his dental practice has become much more powerful. So these dynamics aren't just about the big stories and the big companies. They're about the local companies in every area who need to learn how to build these communities around their work.
What I like about the message that you're telling us is that it's not just about commerce. It's not just about the bottom line, because using the Me Too movement again, I mean, that's about waking up and realizing, first of all, that there are some bad people who need to be pointed out, because otherwise they're never going to stop. And nobody makes a dollar off of it. It is completely for the betterment of the human race. I love that part of this. Not that I'm against commerce. I mean, that's a good thing too. But I just think it's the same skill set that can help us become better people.
Yeah, I think that's right. And look, I think we all sense, no matter what your politics are or what your background is, I think a lot of people are sensing that we have kind of lost track of real meaning in our lives, right? I think a lot of people are feeling quite lonely and quite anxious. And one part of that is that the only things we really value are things tied to money, right? The things that we count most easily, the things that we value most highly are almost always things tied to money. And because of that, we underappreciate, I think, things which are really important in societies. Things like caregiving, things like the way that we are kind to each other. Now, there'll be people listening to this now who will be kind of rolling their eyes and thinking, well, that's also fluffy. And sure, it is a bit fluffy, but it's also what really matters in life. Yeah, right? At the end of the day, our lives are so much more than our balance sheets.
Oh, so, yes, yeah, I agree. And it is, I don't know about the word fluffy. I mean, there was a guy we had on one time, and he was comparing the rapid change of things to that. Remember those 5 metal balls that would go back and forth? How they start out slow, but the closer they get to the end, they go faster. Like if you were Jesus Christ, and I'm not trying to be religious here, but if you're trying to give a message to humanity so that they would be kinder to each other, in order for that to work back 2,000 years ago, you had to be one person telling another person. It took a long time. Now you could, if Jesus came right now, he could say, you know what, we need to be a little bit kinder to each other. It might spread, overnight, like Me Too did.
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges of our age, actually, is how quickly ideas can spread, and that's a good thing and it's a bad thing, right? But let's look at, for example, people who are kind of climate deniers or anti-vaxxers. Those messages are very resonant around the world, right? People are really doing well with messages that we know aren't tied to truth, but do become very compelling. So one of the challenges, especially for organizations who are trying to kind of broadcast positive, pro-social messages, is are you able to keep up with these organizations who are spreading half-truths and lies so effectively? Because one of the dangers of our age is we used to rely on experts, right? If you wanted to find out about something, you'd go to the encyclopedia, you'd look it up, and you would have a pretty accurate sense of what that topic was. Today, there's so much more information out there. The opportunity for misinformation is very high, but also, in a positive way, the opportunity for organizations that matter to spread their ideas is very effective, is a very real one, but they can't do it if they're still assuming someone's going to read their press release.
You also speak about the advancement of video games. You use the example of Minecraft, which seems to encourage the use of free thinking, and we should be all free thinkers in our world.
Yeah, I think that's. If you remember, do you remember the game Tetris?
Oh, I love that game. Yes.
Right, we all love that game. So if you think about Tetris in a way was the game that represented the old power world. So it was top down, it was single player. These blocks fell down on our heads, and our only job was to make them fit into neat lines. Again and
I hated that. Oh, I know.
Until we collapsed under the pressure.
Right.
Now, if that's the old power world, then the new power world works like the game Minecraft. And if you don't know what the game Minecraft is, it's really worth investigating. So it's a game just like Tetris that's made up of blocks, but the dynamics of the game are very different. So it's built from the bottom up, it's built in a collaborative way. There are no rules to Minecraft. Everyone creates whatever they please. So if you look at a 13-year-old playing Minecraft, she'll typically be playing with 5 or 6 people from around the world. They'll be designing a museum together, they'll be designing a laboratory together, they'll be designing a playground together. And it really speaks to kind of how a younger generation expects to take part in the world. They don't expect to wait there for blocks to drop on their heads and just have a simple job of making them fit into lines.
Right.
They expect to shape their future. And so if there's one lesson from this book, I think, it's that you need to understand that people want to engage on their terms, not yours. And the successful organizations and leaders are working out ways to feed into that need.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there. So is the book to teach us how to use that? And if so, are the younger readers is it going to be more intuitive for them than it would be for the older readers?
Oh, I think that's a great question. I think the answer is largely true, although I would say some of the people I've seen most impressive in the new power world aren't 23, but they're 67 or 73. There's something about mindset here, which is, do you approach the world in a kind of zero-sum way where it's your ideas and everyone should listen, or are you able to create ideas that are shared by many, you're engaging, you're collaborating, you're being very enthusiastic about the way things are changing? The book is really designed for anyone who wants to think, anyone who's thinking the world is changing and they want to be a part of it. That's what the book is designed for. But the book also has a larger message, right? This isn't just a kind of a manual, although it is a manual for how you do all these things. It's also a manifesto for how you can create a better world. Because ultimately, like, the goal of the book is to say, if everyone is participating more in the world, how do we make sure all that participation makes for a fairer, more equitable world? That's the ultimate goal of the book.
And you are super encouraging people not to be like an ostrich and put your head in the sand, because our world is for everyone of every age.
I think that's just right. And look, here's the thing about being an ostrich is you just end up with sand in your ears. And that's a bad outcome for anybody facing the future.
See, that's a great line. It's just you getting up with. I mean, that's the kind of thing that'll catch on. That's a meme or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Don't be an ostrich; you get sand in your ears. So, are you using the science behind what you're talking about in order to promote the book? Because your book is doing really well. So it looks like you're using what you're talking about for the book itself. It's almost ironic, isn't it?
Well, I think that's right, and I think one of the most powerful things that we've learned. Once the book, the paperback is released, I think today or very shortly. So the paperback has just come out now. But when the hardback came out last year, there was about a 6-week lag from the hardback coming out to some really interesting things beginning to happen. And I tell you what that 6-week lag was about. It was about people really reading the book and digesting it and then starting to act around it. Mm-hmm. So we've started to engage with these amazing groups of people around the world who are who are taking the New Power lens and applying it to their work. So I'll give you a couple of examples. There is a network of radiologists around the world, female radiologists, who have really got interested in the book as a way of thinking about how they strengthen their work as doctors, how they do better work, how they connect as a network. We've come across chief security officers who are protecting companies from threats, who are thinking about the ways that they all need to connect with each other in a new power world. We've seen nurses, particularly nurses actually, who have started to create networks of nurses around the UK in particular, but much further afield in new power ways. So the most interesting thing about this book is it kind of begun in a very new power way. It began a conversation that now other people are making much more interesting, and that's the great promise of this world in any case.
And another thing your book is doing is that you are encouraging people to get away from this kind of group thinking. I mean, we can look at the politics and the different parties today, and all of the parties are scared because there are more and more people that aren't following the party. They're following what they feel would be right as an individual.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think that also comes down to, the truth is the story of our era in many ways is one of personalization. People expect things to be done on their terms in a Minecraft way, not in a Tetris way. And that's hard now in a country which has a two-party system. You kind of have the Democrats or the Republicans, and that's offering two choices to a world of people who are expecting many, many more than two choices. So I think there is a real tension there, and I think it's no surprise that in the UK right now you're seeing, a third party beginning to emerge. We've seen that in Spain. We've seen that in many countries around the world. So I think the kind of the reimagination of political parties is definitely going to be a big part of this new power story. And if you're a politician looking to stand out at local level, again, part of the question is, how are you creating a genuine movement and community around your work? And if you're just treating people as voters, if their only job is to vote for you every 4 years, you're never going to create a meaningful enough connection
that's a good
to sustain them over time.
And that's a good awakening. I'm really happy that that's happening. I think one of the words you used I wanted to focus on is the word genuine, because I think that's part of it too. For example, if you had a bad idea or a bad product, I think the world at large would see right away, right through you. They would see that you were either a phony or not quite as adequate. What's a good word? Not adequate, but your ability to like do a radio show, not as good as it should be. But you know what I mean? I think we recognize genuinity. Is that a word, Robin? Quicker than we used to. I think we're not as fooled as easily as we used to be. Does that make sense?
Well, I wish I could agree with you, but I actually think one of the big dangers of this world is actually it's become easier for non-genuine things to get traction. So
really?
there's some very interesting research I saw recently, which was showing that lies are spread more quickly than the truth. So just think about that for a second. The stories that we share with each other, that lies are spread more quickly than the truth. Now, what is the reason for that? One of the reasons is that lies are typically more interesting, right? The truth is sometimes not extreme and sometimes a bit balanced. Lies, ideas at the extreme always get the most traction. If you want to get someone to click on your post online right now, you'll write something at the top like, stop everything and read this and your world will change, right? We are rewarding people who are going to extremes. And in that environment, the authentic and the genuine actually can easily be left behind, which is why it's so important that people who do trade in genuine and authentic learn these new power skills, because those are the people we need to enter this marketplace and spread their ideas effectively.
Okay, and I won't disagree with what you just said, but an example to support what I was trying to say is on Amazon itself or on Yelp or anything where the public chimes in. Usually they'll see right away. If you see, 100 people saying this is a 5-star book and 2 or 3 giving it 2 stars or 1 star, then chances are it's a worthwhile book. Or hotel, Yelp, you'll use Yelp for hotels or restaurants. You kind of have an idea. That's, I guess, maybe that's
yeah. No, I think that's a very good point. And actually, if you think about the difference between old power and new power, in the old power world, like if you wanted to, let's say for the sake of argument, if you wanted to buy our book, you would have one thing you could rely on. You could look at, an article in the New York Times about the book saying it's a good book, and you would trust that source.
Right.
But you can also now, and you can all do it right now. You can go onto Amazon and you can look at the reviews on Amazon, and you can see what people like you think of that book. And in a way, I think that's the best of both worlds, right? Which is you have the old power source, which is the kind of trusted expert.
Correct.
And you have the new power source of the crowd. And if you have both of those data points, I think that can really help us make good decisions.
Which, by the way, I just bought your book on Amazon. I bought it. Yeah, I bought it, but you did send us one, so let me give away the one you sent me, but I have my own on its way. So if I have a listener who would like the book, it's called New Power, How Anyone Can Persuade, Mobilize, and Succeed in Our Chaotic, Connected Age. Again, I will say this, that a lot of business people will say, oh, I need this for my business, but I think it's more than that. I think it's about positive changes that have nothing to do with commerce or the bottom line financially. And I love that fact. Henry Timms and Jeremy Hymans wrote the book, and I have a copy. If you want it, call me. I'll leave it here for you. The rest of us have to go buy it like I just did. Do you have a different website besides Amazon you'd like to recommend?
No, Amazon is great for buying the book, but our website is thisisnewpower.com.
Okay, this is newpower.com. I loved the conversation. I wasn't even looking at the clock, so I made you late for your next interview. Thank you so much.
It was nice to chat. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll be right back.